I pledge my eternal gratitude to any law nerd who would edit and combine original Emily's live coverage of this trial with Sidebars coverage at specific moments. That sounds like a doctoral project. Day 21, May 23rd. The court, good morning. Do we have any preliminary matters? Rottenborn, we have some exhibits to hand out the court. That would be fantastic. That will make Jamie's day. All right, anything else, Rottenborn? Thank you, Your Honor. The court, we're ready for the jury. Yes, yes. Jury enters. Good morning. Your next witness. Yes, Your Honor. Amber calls Dr. Richard Moore. All right, Dr. Moore. All right. This is regarding whether or not Johnny Depp's finger could be injured the way Johnny Depp said his finger was injured.
As Dr. Gilmer said, we can't definitively say what caused this injury. Did I read that correctly?
You did.
Okay.
Your Honor, I would object to the incomplete impeachment. I think if she's going to read his answer, she also needs to read or give Dr. Moore the chance to read the paragraph below. She just picked out half of his answer.
No.
You can redirect.
Rottenborn,
Yeah,
you can
the
redirect.
paragraph above.
Dr. Moore, there's no question pending. Thank you, though.
Thanks, Boo.
That
But I can't say.
quite likely that the initial mechanism described at the time of presentation of the accordion doors would classically create this injury pattern. You know, the hand up in front. If you picture accordion doors as the edge is closed, if the hand's up, the palm is exposed. If the door's pushed,
Dr.
hinge
Moore,
closes about the fingers.
I understand that. But my question is,
I think it's important that they understand.
Well, that's what redirect's
this
for.
is the time
sir.
for me to ask you questions. Your counsel will have the ability to rehabilitate you and ask you questions on redirect. Right now, let's try my question.
Okay.
You can't definitively say what caused the injury to Mr. Depp's fingers. Yes or no?
No.
Okay. You reviewed Dr. Kipper's deposition testimony informing your opinion about Mr. Depp's finger injury, correct?
Correct.
Informing your opinion, did you consider Dr. Kipper's deposition testimony that while Dr. Kipper was providing emergency treatment
Objection,
for
Your
Mr.
Honor.
Depp?
No.
Can we approach?
Okay.
Bro, no. Rottenborn, objection, Your Honor. May we approach? Okay, Rottenborn, Your Honor. You've already excluded this testimony as hearsay. It was in the deposition designations when Dr. Kipper claimed that Mr. Depp told him that this had happened with a vodka bottle as he was picking him up in Australia. Your Honor concluded that testimony from Dr. Kipper's deposition as hearsay. The court said, well, when Dr. Kipper was testifying, Ms. Vasquez said, correct. Rottenborn said, yes, I understand. Vasquez said, he can testify too. The court said, because he reviewed, and Ms. Vasquez said, he reviewed the deposition. And that's the thing with experts. They can testify that they reviewed the deposition, but they can't say what was said. Rottenborn said he can testify as to what he reviewed, but it's being offered by Ms. Vasquez. It's not being offered by us. And the court said overruled. He said, okay. This expert was talking about the manner of injury. So determining what other doctors knew or other individuals knew the manner of injury is relevant as to whether you recalled it or perceived it or whatever. Ms. Bredehoft, Your Honor, we would like to call Dr. Spiegel. Dennison, Your Honor, may we approach before the witness is sworn? Oh, good. Oh, good. Oh, good. That's fine. Yes, sir. Dennison. This witness in this deposition testified that he is, I think that's probably going to opine to a degree of medical certainty that Mr. Depp, in fact, committed intimate partner violence. I think that's an ultimate issue and also is not reflected in his disclosure. Beyond that, he indicates he is going to opine, at least in his deposition, as to the credibility of Ms. Heard, which I believe is an improper inquiry for an expert under the Virginia rules. The court said, I think this was a motion in limine. In limine. Ms. Bredehoft, it was, Your Honor. You denied it. Your Honor denied the motion in limine intimate issue. The court said, oh, Ms. Bredehoft, yeah, What he's going to testify to, Your Honor, is that Mr. Depp's conduct is consistent with the risk factors. The court, the risk factors? Ms. Bredehoft, the risk factors. That it is consistent with, correct, that the evidence indicates that it's consistent with. The court said, let me see what the motion in limine was. The motions in limine, again, I will sometimes jokingly call them the motions in lemonade because you're really trying to make lemonade out of lemons in your motions in limine. But the motions in limine are all the pretrial motions that are trying to decide what evidence is coming in, what evidence is coming out. So it is all of those motions of, you know, they can testify to this. They didn't disclose that. That picture seems altered. This can't come in. This can come in. This wasn't disclosed. All of that gets done before they're in trial, because otherwise there would be days of argument over legal matters that the jury doesn't need to waste their time for. This is all done to make sure once the jury gets into the courthouse and is selected, that these things go more quickly. Mr. Dennison said the testimony. Ms. Bredehoft said, I don't. Dennison said that testimony is consistent with his disclosure. The court says, as long as he stays with that, Dennison said, right. But they cannot say, and I think you said improper for him to say that is that Mr. Depp committed. The court said, well, he's not going to say risk factors. Ms. Bredehoft said, he's going to say that it's consistent. But we're going to go through all evidence of that. The court said, correct. Bredehoft said, but even if he did, no. What we're not doing is getting an expansive reading of his disclosure, Elaine. But even if he did, and he did say at any time deposition, and he did incorporate and supplement all of our depositions of our experts, but what he's going to say is that it's consistent with it. But the rules would allow him to testify to an ultimate issue if the court said, that's what we're making sure, that's not being testified. The court's like, everything you just said is what we're trying to not do. Bredehoft said, but I believe he's going to testify that he has all the evidence of risk factors, and the risk factors are consistent with risk factors consistent. Dennison said, I don't have a problem with that. I also do have a problem, however. He met with Ms. Heard over Zoom for 1 hour and has testified, at least in deposition, that he finds her the more credible witness. The court, he's not going to testify to credibility. The jury's job is to determine credibility. You can't have an expert say that person's lying, that person's not. The jury gets to decide that. And the jury can decide that. The jury can be like, you're full of shit. I'm not believing anything you say. That's their prerogative, and there's jury instructions on that issue. The court, he's not going to testify to credibility. Ms. Bredehoft, that's not what he said in his deposition. He said, based on Dr. Curry's testing, the issues that, in fact, one of the findings in there is that they're being truthful in their responses, and he has been consistent on that. That's absolutely one of the things that he said. The court said he can't testify to credibility. That's up to the jury to decide credibility. Bredehoft said he's going to testify that the testing result reflected that she was giving truthful responses to Dr. Curry's test, which he can do. That's one of the factors. Mr. Dennison, again, not in the disclosure. Do you see how important the expert disclosures are? Bredehoft, actually it was. The court, I'm not going to allow that. I'm going to allow that testimony, and you can cross-examine on that. Dennison, okay. So the court is reminding Bredehoft, you cannot have this person testify that Amber Heard is a credible witness. That's for the jury to decide. And then Dennison said, right, and remember, I don't have to tell you to remember. You remember. Both Dr. Curry and Dr. Hughes talked about this in terms of professional opinions around evidence of feigning. This wasn't who's telling the truth. The court said, right, but it was just a factor in that particular test. Bredehoft, a factor in the particular test. The court said, that's fine. You can cross-examine on it. Dennison said, okay, thank you, Your Honor. Bredehoft said, may I just tell the witness briefly? The court said to remind him. Bredehoft said to remind him. Yeah, remind him before he's sworn in. That's perfect. Bredehoft, thank you, Your Honor. Great. Thing is going on where they need to ask the doctor. I'm surprised they didn't just excuse the jury at this point and bring the doctor up and let the judge ask. Dr. Spiegel, MD. Examination by counsel. Looks like this doctor is coming up to be sworn in. Why there is such a thing as client-attorney confidentiality, but no medical, especially mental health. It was waived in this case. Attorney-client privilege was not waived, but the medical was waived in this case for both sides, which allowed both sides to get into some of these areas that we're now seeing. Hello from Holland. What's the big deal about JD using an
Thank you,
earpiece
Your Honor.
on set? It seems like
Will
a
you
good
please
idea.
tell the jury your full name and business address?
I think they're trying to say that
R. Spiegel. I'm a physician.
his
I work at 825 Fairfax Avenue in Norfolk, Virginia,
I just hear
as part of the Eastern Virginia Medical School.
hello, Perry the platypus.
And what is
That's
your
all I hear
occupation?
right now.
And what,
on
if
this
any,
channel.
review have you conducted of the deposition and testimony of Mr. Depp's hired witness, Dr. Curry?
Oh,
Objection.
Sure.
oh, well, this is interesting. Now we're on sidebar number 2 of many. Okay, what if any? This is Elaine questioning. Okay, what if any review have you conducted of the deposition and testimony of Mr. Depp's hired witness, Dr. Curry? Objection, Your Honor. May we approach? Your Honor, when we were up here last time, Bredehoft represented that there's reference in this disclosure or in the rebuttal to the disclosure to Dr. Curry. Her name does not appear. There's no reference at all to any evaluation of Amber Heard. The court said, is there an opinion about the credibility? Is there an opinion about the credibility? That's the court. Bredehoft said he testified in his deposition. Then we supplemented and incorporated his deposition. The court, do you have that for me, Bredehoft? I do. So this is, again, what's being disclosed, what's not being disclosed. Just because they testified about it in deposition doesn't mean it comes in. If it's not in disclosures, that's what they're arguing about. Your Honor, we are very specific. Oh, wait, I do. The court said this is the deposition taken on the 14th. Bredehoft said specifically. The court said, so where in here does it talk about? Bredehoft said it specifically incorporates his deposition testimony. The court says, well. Dennison said, well, the contention is the last line says, I can talk about anything anybody else talks about that. That's not an appropriate disclosure. How Spiegel-y does that sound? I can talk about anything anybody else talks about. What? So Spiegel-y. Bredehoft, no, Your Honor, we did incorporate. The court. Well, you just can't incorporate. I don't know who Miss Callanan is. Yeah, that's the court. You can't incorporate it without the deposition, expert depositions. You can't have him testify. Ms. Bredehoft said, what we did was incorporate what he said. We did incorporate his deposition. The court says, but is this specifically put in his supplemental disclosure? Ms. Bredehoft, I don't think that we went and put everything he said in the deposition in. Ma'am, Elaine, you're not new. It has to be in the disclosure. And Dennison's going to be in your entire ass about it. Every other word out of Dennison's mouth was, Your Honor, this wasn't in the disclosure, which is appropriate. If it's not in the disclosure, you shouldn't get to testify about it. These trials are so lined out before you even get to trial. I don't think that we went and put everything he said in the deposition, in the supplemental disclosure. The court, you have to put his deposition in. You have to supplement what his opinions are going to be. Ms. Bredehoft, right. But that's just a commentary on a particular, he's just saying that evidence supports that, and evidence that supports it. That's an opinion. The court said, right. Ms. Bredehoft said, that's not a major opinion. Last I checked, there are not major and minor opinions. There are opinions and not opinions. Ms. Bredehoft, it's not a major opinion. The court, I understand that. But what Mr. Dennison is talking about, if he's going to opine an opinion that she was credible in her answers to place it, Ms. Bredehoft, that's not a major opinion. That is part of the major opinions, Your Honor, are very specific to drugs and alcohol, but he gives all the evidence that supports that. The court said, I understand the opinion that she was truthful in her answers. Where is that? Where is that in the disclosures? Ms. Bredehoft, that's not an opinion. That's him saying that based on the test results, she scored this in that particular test result of Dr. Curry, and that means she was incredibly answering those tests. The court, that's an opinion. I'll sustain the objection. They are going to talk about reviewing Dr. Curry's testimony. I have a feeling, and this is a supposition, that they did not know this expert would be talking about IPV because they already had Dr. Hughes talk about IPV. I don't know if they're trying to fix Dr. Hughes's testimony, if they're answering the internet with Dr. Hughes's testimony not being substantially helpful, but it's very interesting to me. The court, that's an opinion. I'll sustain the objection. Dennison, no references to Dr. Curry, right? Now, Dennison has learned with Elaine that you have got to get the court to say it like, you cannot say this or this or that. Because otherwise Elaine will be like, what? It's not like a major opinion. It's just like commentary. It's fine. So now Dennison is making sure that the court is very clear with Elaine. So the next time they end up at sidebar, which will be in like a minute and a half, it's very clear. And then Dennison will say, Your Honor, like we said last time, Ms. Bredehoft, I don't think you can say he can't make any reference. The problem for me with Elaine is that her opening statement put me off so much. It was hard. It's so hard for me to follow her style of argument. If it had just been Rottenborn doing this trial, it would have been so different. I think the Elaine Amber combo is the biggest win that Johnny Depp was handed in this entire case. All right. The court, if he referenced to hers in his opinions, that's fine. He can't opine about the results. Dennison said, right, the MMPI, that's the issue. There's no reference in this instance to any MMPI, and I suspect he's going to talk about Dr. Curry's MMPI. Ms. Bredehoft, Your Honor, it's not a major part of his opinion. Good that he doesn't have to talk about it, Elaine. Good. The court, I'm going to sustain the objection. Ms. Bredehoft, all right, thank you. Mr. Dennison, thank you, Your Honor. The court, I can feel that in my soul. The court,
Did you review the deposition and testimony of Dr. Curry?
Dr.
Curry?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Ms. Bredehoft, do you remember my question? And did you review the deposition and testimony of Dr. Curry? Dr. Curry. Yeah, Dr. Curry. Yeah. I reviewed the testimony of Dr. Curry and Barry the platypus.
Did you review the deposition and trial testimony of Dr. Hughes?
Yes. Objection, Your Honor.
I reviewed Dr. Curry's reports. I reviewed Dr. Curry's testimony. What, if any, did you review of the deposition of trial testimony of Dr. Hughes? Yes. That's not the answer.
Your Honor, beyond the scope of the disclosure.
I'll allow that.
Thank you, Your Honor.
It is probably beyond the scope of the disclosure.
Did you interview Mr. Depp?
No, I did not.
Objection, Your Honor. Beyond the scope of disclosure, the court, I'll allow it. Thank you, Your Honor. Overruled. Did you interview Mr. Depp? No, I did not. The bailiff, all rise. Recess taken from 10:43 to 11. The bailiff, all rise. Please be seated. Come to order. The court, all right. Ready for the jury. Your Honor, can we approach before the jury gets in? So they had taken a break and then we're coming in. Don't approach. Depp, we've approached. So the court says, okay, sure. Dennison, Your Honor, I want to be totally mindful of your prior orders. This witness testified that he invited twice Mr. Depp to be examined. Those two invitations were motions to this court to order a medical exam, and both of those were denied. So Dennison is taking issue with the fact that Spiegel's making it seem like Johnny Depp was avoiding being interviewed. And he's taking issue with that insinuation. That it's not that Johnny Depp didn't show up, it's that the court said he didn't have to. Ms. Bredehoft, actually, we did request it and they said no. And then we moved for it and you said no. Same. The court, you can address that on cross-examination. Mr. Dennison, but I can mention your order because Dennison wants the jury to know that the court said that Depp did not have to sit for an examination by Spiegel. Ms. Bredehoft, we didn't ask whether they will. We did make a request. We requested of them independent of the order. The court said, right, but you did an order. Afterwards, you asked for an order. Bredehoft, that's correct. The court, you can redirect on that too. That's fine. That's fair game. And so the court is allowing Dennison to say, you're aware that the court denied their request to interview. He wants to make sure that there's no insinuation left that is improper, in his opinion. So back in open court,
It was right after the rehab on the island in Australia when Mr. Depp went out partying with Marilyn Manson.
Bingo.
Objection beyond the scope of the question.
What the fuck was the
Actually, just asking
question?
for the record evidence for
I'll
this.
sustain the objection. Next question.
Okay.
What other record evidence did you
Okay.
have supporting this?
You were talking about this, and you may be able to control the risk factors for any of us may be able to control the risk factors for IPV. Any of us might be able to. Okay, when we're
This
thinking
is a
and we're not
disjointed direct at this
disinhibited,
point.
not having these hyper intense emotions from substances. Once you add that to this mix, your brain can no longer do what it's supposed to do, and it's supposed to prevent you from doing this. Quite frankly, because it's wrong.
In your review of this case, is there record evidence of
his
physical
verbal
violence
cadence.
by Mr. Depp?
So,
Objection, Your Honor.
Which
No foundation.
Do you want to approach him?
Yeah, let's approach on it. So his last objection was no foundation to whether you saw Depp perpetrate violence, because again, he doesn't have any firsthand account. He's going off of other accounts. I am very, very interested in seeing how this goes. The way he's turned to the jury, he's just like set up camp, turned to the jury to talk. Doc, it's been interesting. Mr. Dennison said, objection, Your Honor, foundation. The court, do you want to approach on that? The court, yes, sir. Mr. Dennison, we're getting to this. The court, can you say that question again? Ms. Bredehoft said, oh gosh, I remember this. This went back and forth with her trying to get this question out. And it was like, question, objection, sidebar, question, objection, sidebar. Okay. Ms. Bredehoft, is there record evidence of, is that recorded? Is there record evidence of physical violence by Mr. Depp, which is one of the risk factors, and it's in the designations, page 84, paragraph 2. Elaine now knows this game. Elaine's ready. Elaine's like, here we are on page 84, paragraph 2. The court, wait. Bredehoft, quote, is there record evidence of physical violence by Mr. Depp? I'm not asking if he was a perpetrator. This is physical violence. You're going to open a door for a lot of things with this, Elaine. The court, you're saying if there's physical violence, Ms. Bredehoft, yes, that he's engaged in physical violence. But this is very much, it's at page 84, paragraph. The court, I understand that. You're just going to state that he has the risk factors. You're not getting into why he thinks. Ms. Bredehoft cuts the court off and says, yes, he's going through the risk. What are the factors? And he actually says, the court, you can ask that question, what the factors are. Bredehoft said, but then he also said, and this is part of his opinion, that there's actually record evidence of him committing physical violence, sexual violence, psychological regression, which he can testify to that, and that's in his opinion. Mr. Dennison, that's exactly the issue we've raised previously. It's making judgments as to all. The court said, right, he's making judgments as to the evidence. He can't say that. He can't say that there is known physical acts of Mr. Depp because it isn't. That's what the jury's here to decide. Elaine is trying to get Spiegel, or Elaine is trying to allow Spiegel to testify that the evidence shows and proves that Johnny Depp was physically violent and sexually violent towards Amber Heard. That's the jury's determination. The jury determines the facts. And the court is reminding Elaine that the jury determines the facts. Elaine's expert can't be like, well, in my opinion, everything Amber Heard said is true, right? Ms. Bredehoft, he can testify that he's read the record. The court, it doesn't come into evidence. You want to testify that he has read reports in evidence. That's what he based his opinions on. That's fine. But he can't say, yes, there's reported times of this, because he doesn't know that. That's what the jury has to figure out. Ms. Bredehoft, so I can ask him if there's record evidence of physical violence, sexual abuse, and physical aggression, but that he can't say any specifics? The court, what is your question again? Ms. Bredehoft, in your review of the case, is there evidence of physical violence by Mr. Depp? By the way, not her question 2 pages ago at all. It's a completely new and different question. Mr. Dennison, Your Honor, I think it literally continues to invade the providence of the jury here. That's specifically one of the issues the jury is going to ultimately decide, and she's asking him to sum it up for them. And Ms. Bredehoft cuts Dennison off and says, Your Honor, we disclosed this. Elaine, ma'am, they've moved on from your disclosure. They're now talking about whether it's proper evidence. They've moved on from if it's disclosed. You didn't follow where the conversation went, but they've moved on from where it's disclosed. The court, I know you disclosed it. We're past disclosure. Emily, keep reading. Elaine's not keeping up with the conversation happening here at Sidebar. Ms. Bredehoft, and experts are able to testify to ultimate issues as well, and he's going to go through the 3 different types of the IPV here in talking about it, but he's seen recorded evidence that record evidence, I don't want him commenting on the evidence that's before the jury. He can't comment on, yes, he assaulted Miss Heard, because he doesn't know that. It's in evidence for the jury. Ms. Bredehoft, and what he said in his report is he said that, quote, there are numerous witnesses who reported seeing cuts, bruises, and injuries, and that it was reported that the court, okay, so that why don't you ask? The court's now trying to give Elaine a question like, so this'll stop. Why don't you ask, what have you reviewed that shows that? I'm not sure how you want to do it, but I just don't want him to give any kind of conclusion with respect to the evidence. Make sense? Mr. Dennison, it makes sense to me. Ooh. Does anyone else read that like shade? I read that like shade. He's like, it makes sense to me, Your Honor, but I don't know about this one over here. Like, what the fuck is she even doing? Mr. Dennison, it makes sense to me. The court, all right. Mr. Dennison, fundamentally, the court, he's not going to give. His only conclusion is going to be that he meets the risk factors, not that he's done it, correct? Ms. Bredehoft, so I'm going to ask, I just want to make sure. Oh my God. The court, well, okay. Ms. Bredehoft, what have you reviewed that reflects Mr. Depp engaging in physical violence? The court, no. At this point, Judge A wants to be like, Elaine, no, that's not the question. We've been through minutes and minutes of Sidebar, and you still come away with the wrong fucking answer. No. What have you reviewed that reflects Mr. Depp engaging in physical violence? The court, no. Dennison, objection. The court, you just say the risk factors. Risk factors. Bredehoft, risk factor relating to physical violence? That's just one of them. The court, I understand. But what we were discussing earlier is that he wasn't going to, and then Elaine jumps in. He's engaged in the evidence of him engaging in each of the risk factors. The court, right? Just in risk factors, not in engaging in physical violence. Maybe just explaining what the risk factors are first, and then what have you reviewed? Give us your information that he knew that he was Ms. Bredehoft, so if I'm understanding Your Honor's ruling here, clearly you're not, ma'am. So if I'm understanding Your Honor's ruling here, I can't ask him what the record evidence is of Mr. Depp engaging in physical violence, sexual abuse, and instead I just have to ask him to explain what that is and the significance of it to IPV? The court, what the risks, right? What are the risk factors, right? And what he reviewed that makes you believe that he correlates with those risk factors. Does that sound all right? This is Pages. Dennison, yeah, he can identify what risk factors are for IPV. The court, right. And what he reviewed that would put that on that course. But I just don't want him commenting on the evidence itself. Ms. Bredehoft, okay, what it correlates. Okay. You can hear Elaine's brain working in this. Okay. Like, okay. I think I can ask this question. The court, okay. Ms. Bredehoft said, I think so. Thanks, Your Honor. We'll give it a whirl. Ma'am, this is a multi-million-dollar litigation. And you're sitting up there being like, we'll give it a whirl. I just can't. I'm trying, Your Honor. I'm trying. Dennison, okay. Well, how do you think that okay went down? Dennison was like, I guess. I mean, we'll be up here in another 7 seconds because she's just going to give it a whirl. She lost that objection. Depp's team won that objection. Correlation.
So risk factor review that correlate. So starting.
And what, if any, risk factor is narcissism for intimate partner violence?
Huh.
So
who's been diagnosed with narcissism?
Before we get into
because I haven't seen
personality traits or disorder, the overall, it's categorized under what's called cluster B personality.
Objection, Your Honor, beyond the scope of the question.
He's explaining the narcissism.
No, that wasn't the question, Elaine.
Okay.
Are they trying? Who are they trying to implicate as
what, if any,
narcissistic?
record evidence do you have that correlates with Mr. Depp being narcissistic?
Are they trying to diagnose him narcissistic?
Well, I do think
without
that
ever evaluating him.
Fact that
Yikes!
he thought that Amber owed him, Ms. Heard owed him.
Objection, Your Honor.
Improper expert testimony.
The fact that Ms. Heard owed him and only wanted to be together with him because of his fame.
We don't diagnose.
I can
we ask
probably
questions.
say with a reasonable certainty that
Reasonable
to
certainty.
some degree this whole trial is that. because
Objection, Your Honor.
Wait, I wanted to hear what he had to say.
That's not record evidence. Speculation.
Please continue.
That this whole trial in terms of narcissistic insult is what's going on. I believe that Mr. Depp was very much a mainstay appropriately in Hollywood, and then this was pulled the rug without.
Objection, Your Honor.
I
Can we
think
be?
he's able to explain what
Sustain that objection.
can you explain what you mean by this whole
is-
trial?
This is getting
This
Directly
proceeding will go,
approach.
this court case we're going through.
There's an objection, sir.
Sir. Wow. Dennison, objection, Your Honor. Bredehoft, he's simply explaining court, I'll sustain it. Can you explain what you mean by this whole trial? Dennison, Your Honor, may we approach the court? Yes. Answer, this court case we're going through, the court, there's an objection, sir. That's the part where you stop talking, sir. Dennison, may we approach the court? You may, sidebar. There's like 3 questions. 3 questions. Ms. Bredehoft, well, I think he's just saying as an example that the fact that we've got this trial, the court, I think it's beyond. Get back to what he reviewed. Ms. Bredehoft, all right, I'll try. The court sustained. Ms. Bredehoft, what other conduct is in the record? What other conduct is in the record evidence that correlates with Mr. Depp being narcissistic and having those traits? Was the thing about the trial ruled? I can't say. Yeah, you're not allowed to say that. Not say that. Okay. This is just such a... Okay. Can't say that. That's, he called the whole trial a narcissistic insult. That's bold. Cross better be good. And Denison's crosses have not been my favorite. Cross needs to be very good on this. But calling this trial, this entire trial, a narcissistic insult is absolutely bananas to me. He has not treated.
Well, what other conduct is in the record evidence?
The judge,
that
I think, told her to
correlates,
move on.
with Mr. Depp being narcissistic, having those traits.
He's
Was
trying
the
to
thing about the
diagnose.
trial rule. I can't
Yeah,
speak.
you're not allowed to say that.
Not say that. Okay. The only other thing about narcissism that I think in terms of the trial would be in order to maintain
He's not talking about the
any
trial.
sense of control.
Oh, fuck. He just did
a
exactly what she said he's not
narcissistic
supposed to.
person really has to have lack of empathy.
The only other thing about narcissism, I think, in terms of the trial would be, we're not talking about the trial, would be in order to maintain any sense of control, a narcissistic person really has to have lack of empathy, because in order to engage in behaviors that, quote, are used to keep individuals in control, you don't really think about the other person. You're not really caring about what happens to the other person. So I think that's another fact. So now we're talking about narcissism. We're on page 40, next sidebar. Thank you, Dr. Spiegel. I'm going to now move to the Goldwater Rule. How many of you remember this colloquy?
The Goldwater Rule is when Senator Goldwater was running for presidency.
They're
And
trying to
I'm
get
gonna
out ahead
be honest with you,
of the
I think
cross
it was in
on
the late
this.
60s when he was, early 70s, because
They're trying to
I
get ahead
was
of the cross on this.
too young to even follow politics then. So please don't quote me on exactly when it was. But basically what's happening is
Yeah, time wasting works in Depp's favor the rest of this
clinicians,
trial.
psychiatrists were making these quote unquote armchair diagnoses from their homes or offices because they saw this person on TV, the way they acted, and were asked to comment about what they think their diagnoses are. And
Sir.
therefore, it was felt that that should not be done by professionals in these public settings.
Sir,
Does it have any applicability here?
No. it does
Objection.
Or why not?
No foundation.
Elaine said, why not to
He
him?
was explaining what the Goldwater
You want
Rule
to
was.
approach?
Objection. And Elaine goes, why not? Does that have any applicability here? No, Mr. Denison. Objection. Answer, it does not. Why not? Denison, no foundation. The court, all right. Ms. Bredehoft, he was explaining the Goldwater Rule. She keeps explaining. The court, you can approach. Sidebar. Mr. Denison, if he wants to testify that there are exceptions to the Goldwater Rule, go ahead. But the question was, does it have any applicability here? Ms. Bredehoft, it's in my designation at paragraph 94 or at page 94, paragraph 1. Mr. Denison, clearly it's in her designations. The court, what's the foundation? Ms. Bredehoft, it's an American Psychiatric Association. And the reason I'm asking him this is Dr. Shaw is one of their experts. He claims that it's unethical for him to be giving these opinions here because he hasn't examined Mr. Depp. And the court said, which is the Goldwater Rule? Ms. Bredehoft, excuse me? And the court said, which is the Goldwater Rule? Ms. Bredehoft, right. And so the court said, there was a motion in limine against this at one point. What is your motion in limine that it mentioned the Goldwater Rule? Am I out of bounds here? Ms. Bredehoft, I don't think we had a motion in limine to exclude some of Dr. Shaw's testimony. And Your Honor granted that. The court, to include Goldwater, Bredehoft, I don't think it included the full Goldwater Rule. That's why I'm asking him. The court, so is that something your expert is going to testify to? Denison, yes. The court, okay, I'll allow it. Mr. Denison, in that form, does it have any applicability here? Ms. Bredehoft, I can ask him that. The court, I'll allow it. So now they've done a group project on how they're going to ask this question.
Dr. Spiegel, do you remember the question?
This cross could be
Does
bad.
the
think it's done
Goldwater
well.
Rule have any applicability
So-
here to your testimony and your conclusions and
So she
opinions?
won that objection
No,
and
it
is
does
allowed to
not.
continue to ask.
And
for it.
why?
Multiple reasons.
Dr. Spiegel, do you remember the question? I think. Just ask a new question. Does the Goldwater Rule have any applicability here to your testimony and your conclusions and opinion? No, it does not. And why? For multiple reasons. And then he goes through those reasons. This comes up a lot in cross-examination. Oh, cross-examination. Perfect. This is the beginning of cross-examination. Sir, I'm Wayne Denison. We haven't met. But let me ask you, let's start with what you finished with. I'm sorry, what? Let's start with what you finished with.
Let me ask you, let's start with what you finished with.
I'm sorry, one more time.
Let's start with what you finished with.
Let's open
You
with the close.
understand that the court was twice asked by Ms. Heard's counsel to order a medical exam
Oh dear.
of Mr. Depp, and those motions were denied.
I think your team told the court you didn't want to have them, and the court ruled on it. Right? I don't think the court proactively did it. You kind of had a motion to them, right?
No, when Ms. Heard's lawyers
Oh, boy.
moved for them and asked for them and did not.
We talked
get
about this
them.
this morning. at the
Isn't that
top.
right, sir?
Oh boy.
If you're saying that's what happened, my understanding
I
of
don't
was
know.
that you all did not want him to undergo one. They petitioned for it. The court said no. Yes, that's what my
Same
understanding
thing.
was.
So
Same.
The court said no to ordering Mr. Depp to do the medical exam.
Right. I said the court did not require it. Right.
And there was one that was ordered, in fact, right?
There was.
Heard.
All right.
This is already in evidence, Elaine. Everybody knows that Heard was ordered to sit with Dr. Curry. That's already in evidence. Why waste your time on this objection? Ms. Bredehoft, Your Honor, may we approach? The court, we're not going into this. Mr. Dennison, there you go. Ms. Bredehoft, thank you. Open court. Mr. Dennison, all right. So the last thing you were asked about was the Goldwater Rule. Well, at least that was fast.
All
He
right.
barely had
So
time to walk up and back down. Oh, he
the
moved
last thing
on.
you talked about
He's moving on. Interesting.
was the Goldwater Rule.
Let's see. Question. And what is the record evidence that Mr. Depp exhibits behavior of that are exploitative?
And what is the record evidence that Mr. Depp exhibits behaviors that are exploitative?
Again, I think the whole concept of abuse is exploitative.
Okay. The fourth one was lacks empathy. Do you recall
What?
that?
Yes.
And what is the record evidence that Mr. Depp exhibits lacking empathy?
To be able to commit intimate partner violence and the control you have over someone.
I'm sorry.
Oh, it's based on his assumption that Depp
Could I
committed
be heard?
IPV.
Okay.
So it's based on his determination that Depp lacks empathy is based, this is where he's getting, is based on his assumption that Depp committed IPV. Your Honor, motion to strike, non-responsive. Sidebar, Mr. Dennison, he keeps stating his response with to be able to commit intimate partner violence. Ms. Bredehoft, all right, I'll redirect him. The court, all right.
I'm just going to ask you to give the record evidence of
Not your,
Mr. Depp's lacking empathy that you know of.
what record?
Yes.
It's going to be a
Am I
mess.
Am I allowed to elaborate?
Yes,
Okay.
just a little different than what you said before.
Okay. So if
It's based on your assumption. That's why you can't answer.
one does,
No.
so I'll make it more
No
direct.
recross.
So
What is the significance
Objection,
of that?
hearsay.
I'll sustain the objection.
And what is the significance of that?
Strike it and
the
admonish this
significance
witness.
of that is with
Objection, no foundation.
Sustain.
All right, we'll move on.
again, this is intimidation, psychological abuse where you're solely trying to emotionally.
Objection, Your Honor, can we be heard?
Okay, if you want.
Mr. Dennison, objection, Your Honor. Can we be heard? The court. Okay. Sidebar. This is a form of him saying that this is psychological abuse. This is the exact thing we're going to preclude him from talking about. Ms. Bredehoft, I don't agree, Your Honor. He testified to the risk factors. One of the risk factors, the court, I'm sorry, risk factors. This is not about risk factors. Dennison said that question I like. I think it's responsive. But the answer after the court, if you can just get him there with the risk factors, you'll be fine. Bredehoft, thank you. Open court.
What, if any, evidence is this correlating to the risk factors?
That's a
for
terrible
IPV
question.
perpetrator?
Again, I think the violence comes through.
The violence.
Objection, Your Honor.
Ask a
Just
better
the evidence
question,
Right.
of risk
Elaine.
factors,
All
if you
right.
can.
Evidence,
Yes.
I'm sorry,
Move
the
to
evidence
strike-
of risk factor
Sir.
would be
Dr. Spiegel, if you can answer the question, what, if any, evidence is this correlating to the risk factors for IPV? Again, I think the violence comes through. Dennison, objection. Move to strike. Just the evidence of risk factors if you can. The court, all right.
Can you tell the jury that we've got Seroquel 50 mg? Can you just
Objection,
tell,
hearsay.
can you just tell the, I haven't finished asking the question.
You're reading it into the record,
So,
Elaine.
Let's approach.
Okay.
I don't have words. Okay. We've got Seroquel, 50 milligrams, objection, hearsay. Ms. Bredehoft, I haven't finished asking the question yet. Well, you're asking him to read off what's in these. Let's approach. The court said the hearsay is going to take over. And so that's why Bredehoft cuts off the court and says, right, I'm going to ask him how much Seroquel he was taking per day and what the significance of that was. I'm going to do the same with the Adderall. Going to do the same with newer, whatever the newer ones we were asking about. Dennison, the document did not get into evidence. There's no foundation for this document other than the question. Ms. Bredehoft, he's entitled to rely on hearsay, Your Honor. He can rely on it, but you can't get the hearsay in. So he can say Johnny Depp was on medication, but you can't read out how much medication he's on. The court said he isn't saying how much. He can do a hypothetical if someone takes him around. Do you agree with that? Dennison said, yeah, he could do a hypothetical. The court, he can do a hypothetical. Bredehoft, all right, I'll ask him that way. Thank you. Because now they're trying to get this in. So Elaine is trying to read things off into the record that can't be read off into the record. This witness is not allowed to testify to what other witnesses said unless it's the foundation for their opinion. So they're allowed to say, I looked at this doctor's opinion and it was the basis of my opinion, but they're not allowed to go into reading in dosages and medication. Emily, would you hire Elaine? No.
Michelle, can you scroll up? Just
Elaine and I can't have a conversation because if she said, what, if anything, do you need help with? I would have to hang up the phone.
So, Dr. Siegel, if someone was taking 50 milligrams
Megabytes.
of Seroquel,
They're megabytes.
20.
Closing arguments. Ms. Vasquez, good morning. Good morning. There we go. Let us start finding our sidebars. 12? There's 12. Fucking hell. 12 sidebars during closing? Stop it. Stop it. All right, let's see who's talking.
Before Amber Heard, ladies and gentlemen, no woman ever before Amber Heard ever claimed that Mr. Depp raised a hand to her in his 58 years. And no other woman since Ms. Heard made that false claim back on May 17th.
It was a great way to comment without commenting.
2016. Has and repeated it in her December 2018 op-ed. Has any woman come forward since? This is Me Too without any Me Too. To the contrary, ladies and gentlemen, you heard Kate Moss 2 days ago testify. This is a woman who has never testified in any proceeding ever.
It is a good
private
argument.
person. Testified that Mr. Depp never abused her and that Ms. Heard lied to you. And she lied to you twice when she told you.
Objection, Your Honor. That Ms. Sure.
That is objection, Your Honor. Do you want to approach? Sure. This is going to be a misstating testimony. Mr. Rottenborn absolutely misstates the evidence. That's way beyond argument. You didn't let him ask that question of Miss Moss. This is not a bad argument because it was only about the staircase. Mr. Chu, when she said she suggested twice that the court stairs, but it was involving the stairs. Mr. Chu, correct. That's what I'm going to say. I understand why Rottenborn jumped in on this. I get it because did Kate Moss testify that he absolutely never ever abused her? Or was it when they were talking about the stairs? I don't fault Rottenborn for objecting. I think that it is on the line. Did she testify that Miss Depp never abused her and that Miss Heard lied to you? I mean, it might be she testified Mr. Depp never abused her, that Miss Heard lied to you about the staircase. I get it. Ben Chu's like, what? I'm getting there. The court, that's what he's going to say, okay? The court's like, what? Everybody's like, what? I understand. I understand where you're coming for, Rottenborn. On this one, I understand where you're at. So you can object during closing. It's generally bad form. It has to be something egregious like misstating the testimony. He's saying it misstates the testimony. This is argument. He's allowed to argue that she lied. I've seen some of you asking if attorneys have to stick to their kind of script in closing. No, they can say whatever they want within the
Ladies and
ethical
gentlemen,
bounds.
As I was saying, lied to you twice when she suggested to you that Mr. Depp pushed Kate Moss down the stairs. You told her, you heard her say just 2 days ago.
Ben Chu's not going to be rattled by it,
that
though.
Mr. Depp never did that, and he never hit her, and he never kicked her. That was one of...
Objection, Your Honor. That's not what she testified
It's
to.
exactly
We
what
just
she
discussed that.
testified.
Oh, we can fight
Thank
this
you.
out right now. Ben Chu's like, you want to
Go
go?
on.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and take a break at this time. Your Honor, 2 items. Okay, sure. Bredehoft. The first of those, Your Honor, the court, wait. Bredehoft, sorry. The court, okay, what's your issue, Ms. Bredehoft? The first of these is we believe that the arguments on damages and restoring the reputation has opened up the door for the UK judgment. They're still trying. They're real salty about the UK judgment. They are still trying. They are still trying. The court, no, definitely not. Evidence is done. No, definitely not. Evidence is done. Evidence is done. Elaine, no. You get the court. Ms. Bredehoft, okay, Your Honor. The second thing, I just saw while Mr. Chu was arguing, I think we made a mistake in both verdict forms. On the last, I think you'll appreciate it as well. The court, sorry, Judy. Last day, we're going to take Judy's mic out. Ms. Bredehoft, she's never going to forgive me. I believe this word should be any instead of all. I think what this does is require them to find all 3. The court said, okay, so you want us to change the last page if you answered yes to all of the questions? Ms. Bredehoft said to any. The court said no to all the questions. Well, all the questions in 1, all the questions in 2, and all the questions in 3. Ms. Bredehoft said or. Mr. Rottenborn said 1, 2, 4, 3. What? The court said, you see what I'm saying? I can explain that to them if you want. Ms. Bredehoft said, I think that would be helpful. The court said, at the end, I'll explain that to them. That means you have to answer all the questions. Ms. Bredehoft said, I think, because I think it works. The court said, you created the form, right? Rottenborn said, yes. The court said, so you can see that the court is now looking at Rottenborn. I can see in this transcript that the court is looking at Rottenborn. You created the form, right? And Rottenborn's like, yes. The court said, so I'm correct, right? And Rottenborn said, yes, that's right. So now the judge is, Elaine is arguing, and the judge is looking at Rottenborn as the adult in the room being like, I'm right? Can you tell your co-counsel to stop? The court is like, Rottenborn, you created the form. Why is Elaine arguing over the form? Why aren't Elaine and Rottenborn on the same page? God, to have a drink with Rottenborn under like a cone of silence. Can you imagine? Rottenborn, yes, that's right. The court, I'll explain that to them to make sure we have it right. Ms. Bredehoft, thank you, Your Honor. Why didn't you and Rottenborn just talk if he made the forms? Ms. Bredehoft said, thank you, Your Honor. The court, did you break that too? Ms. Vasquez, I don't think so. It's still on. So that's a good thing. Mr. Chu, keep laughing. It's my fault. The court, let's make it 11:10. Thank you, Your Honor. We'll come back at 11:10. All rise. So they're taking a break for the jury. That's the morning break. I'm guessing this is Elaine. Then what does he do? He rearranges the furniture, or he might have knocked something off, off one of the countertops or something. This is Elaine. I think this is the testimony of his bodyguards. No. In closing, it's not, I think this is the testimony. It is, this is this. But you saw the pictures. He went through and trashed the place again as he left. Now, the next part of this is the police coming. Io tells the, I'm making my own head hurt. Io tells the police he's in New York. He calls the New York police, 911. He's afraid they're not going to get there fast enough. Well, if they're in New York and she's in LA, then yes, NYPD is probably not going to get to New York fast enough.
He's afraid they're not going to get there fast enough.
I'm sure Io was like, hey, they're never going to get to LA in time. Yep, they're in New York. So he's afraid they're not going to get there fast enough. He still remembers December 15th because he came in afterwards and saw all of the injuries on Amber and all of the evidence. And he's testified that Amber's still in there and the police haven't come and that Johnny's going to kill her. He calls a friend in LA and says, please call 911. We've got to get somebody there fast. She calls 911.
So she calls 911. So we have two calls, and you'll see the call summary. And the call summary shows those two calls really close in proximity here. So it's not them, we didn't get the first police officer, so we'll rough up the place and make a second one. You'll see that they're like 8 minutes apart up there. But it took 2 hours to dispatch the two different ones. And Amber never even had any idea.
This is exactly how Dr. Hughes talks. I wonder if they're
first
friends.
ones come. And, we've talked about it. We've shown you the pictures. The police officers admitted that those pictures
wanted this to be
could
good.
very much have been what was there that night.
The
Remember,
only one with
Officer
vomitus
Cadman
in this
was his
courtroom
first
right
week
now
on the
is
job.
Elaine, and it's
Officer
word
Simmons was
vomitus.
three years on the job at that point. They say, they told Josh that if she will press charges, if she'll give a name, we can file a report and make an arrest. She wouldn't do it. You did hear from Detective Sandanaga. That's the domestic violence.
Oh, they finally stepped into the misstating the testimony. Objection, may we approach? Mr. Chu, she blatantly misstated the testimony of the police officer. The police officer said there was no sign of injury. There was no arrest. She needs to correct that. Ms. Bredehoft, Josh Drew testified the police officers told him she's got a mark on her face. There's property damage, The court, was that in evidence? Ms. Bredehoft, yes, that was. Ben Chu, no, it's not, Your Honor. Ms. Bredehoft said, no, it did make it in evidence. Mr. Chu, the police officer said there was no sign of injury. The court, well, I know the police officer. She just said Mr. Drew. Ms. Bredehoft, no. Josh Drew's came in. It came in. Mr. Chu, I don't believe that's correct, Your Honor. The court, I know what the police officer said. Ms. Bredehoft said it came in through Josh Drew. The court, well, I'll allow it. Go ahead. Mr. Chu will correct that. So there's an argument between the witness testimony, but that's what happens in a trial. You recall Josh Drew saying that the officer told him, if she'll give a name, we'll make an arrest. He definitely said that. The jury must feel that they are being assaulted with words, and I can understand their feeling. Like it's
You recall Josh Drew
Jesus,
saying the
right back
police
into it.
officer told
Fuck.
him, if she'll give a name, we'll make an arrest. He definitely said that.
The makeup thing, the fresh face, natural.
This makeup thing, fresh face, natural. These were Adam Waldman planting these when he talked to the ECB people.
Those were Adam Waldman planting these when he talked to the ECB people.
Remember the testimony.
He
We kept
planted
asking,
the
"Did you talk to
witness
Mr. Waldman?
testimony?"
Mr. Waldman? Mr. Waldman was trying to plant in all of these people's minds.
Objection, Your
And
Honor.
somehow she was
No,
Do you approach?
that is so inappropriate. Elaine, there is no evidence that Adam Waldman planted these stories with witnesses who are now testifying in court. There are lines that have been crossed, but what the fuck? Mr. Waldman was trying to plant in all of these people's minds. Oh, shit. Mr. Chu, objection, Your Honor. Ms. Bredehoft, that something wasn't, if you could approach sidebar. Mr. Chu, she's completely misstating testimony here. Ms. Bredehoft, I don't agree. Mr. Chu, she just is. Ms. Bredehoft, I don't agree. Mr. Chu, none of them said that they were planted by Adam Waldman. They all said this is a truthful statement. She's just lying. Holy shit. Ben Chu's like, she's lying. Your Honor, she's lying. Ben Chu's pissed. She's just lying. Ms. Bredehoft, I'm not lying, Your Honor. Mr. Chu, she is lying. The court, well, Ms. Bredehoft, no. We asked specifically about Adam Waldman. Your Honor will recall that. And they said, I don't remember. Yes, I did talk to him. The court, right. But nobody said he planted those statements, or these statements. Ms. Bredehoft, no, I didn't. And I didn't say that he planted it. The court, you just said that. Oh boy. The court, right. But nobody said he planted those statements. Ms. Bredehoft, no, I didn't. And I didn't say that he planted it. The court, you just said that. Ms. Bredehoft said, I accused him of planting it. Oh, the parsing the words. You can't just make stuff up in closing. The court, if you could clear that up, Ms. Bredehoft, okay, thanks. The court, Ms. Bredehoft. So I didn't say that any of the witnesses admitted that Adam Waldman planted that. I'm saying he planted it. That's me arguing the planted. And that's because it's all the same thing.
I didn't say that any of the witnesses admitted that Adam Waldman planted
Yes,
that.
you
I'm
did.
saying he planted it. That's me arguing he planted. And that's because
The
it's
judge
all the
admonished
same
her.
thing. She wasn't wearing any makeup.
The judge admonished
She was
her.
natural. She wasn't wearing a stitch of
I
makeup.
didn't say.
Every one of them says it. It's the exact same thing. Well, why would you say that? She's an actor. She's not going to go outside her house, without putting makeup on.
But you know what? Guys saw her here. You guys, sorry. You saw Amber on the stand. There were days where she didn't wear eye makeup. And a lot of people think that she's not wearing makeup when she doesn't have mascara and eyeliner on. She has different looks. And some of them were with eye makeup and some of them without. And people misunderstand, especially people that aren't good in makeup. A lot of men, frankly, go, oh, then she probably doesn't have makeup. And that's where the mistake happens.
A lot of people think that she's not wearing makeup when she doesn't have mascara and eyeliner on. She has different looks, and some of them are with eye makeup and some of them are
We were
without.
trying to show you, ladies and gentlemen.
People misunderstand, especially people that aren't that good at makeup, and a lot of men, frankly, go, oh, then she probably doesn't have makeup.
Look at
And that's where
her
that
looking at the
mistake
jury.
happens.
Ladies and
But you
gentlemen,
heard her testimony.
gentlemen of the
heard
jury,
her
you don't
makeup
know.
artist
Dr. Hughes and Dr. Spiegel testified about Bonnie Jacobs' notes. And I remember I was holding that. You don't get to see them. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you don't get to see them, but I was holding them in my hand. Trust me. Trust me.
Dr. Hughes and Dr. Spiegel testified about Bonnie
You're
Jacobs.
really going to
Yes.
Dr.
And
Spiegel?
remember that I was holding that, you don't get to see them, but they testified that they went through them. Dr. Hughes testified that she also spoke with Bonnie Jacobs.
Dr.
She
Spiegel's
kept
our hope.
contemporaneous notes from 2011 when she first started seeing Amber. And the abuse is documented in those notes,
Boy.
what Dr. Hughes testified to. They start in 2012, both physical and sexual
Objection, Your
abuse.
Honor.
That Dr. Hughes
Admit-
testified to that.
Listen to her arguing. Dr. Hughes testified to that. No, she didn't. Mr. Chu, objection, Your Honor. Ms. Bredehoft, Dr. Hughes testified to that. This is a lawyer that's already been called a liar at the bench where the court is like, you need to fix that statement. The audacity. Mr. Chu, may court approach? The court's like, sidebar. The court, yes, sir. Mr. Chu, she keeps misstating. She continues to lie to the jury. Ms. Bredehoft, no, I'm not.
I know you are, but what am I? I'm not a liar. You are.
No, I'm not. I'm definitely not misstating that one. I'm definitely not misstating that one. You got me last time, Your Honor. I wasn't trying to imply. You got me last time, but I know I'm not misstating on this one. Gosh. Yeah, motion. Yeah, yep. No, I'm not. I'm definitely not misstating that one. Mr. Chu, she's continuing to lie and misstate the evidence. The court, which lie do you say there? That was not in the testimony. Ms. Bredehoft, oh, it was. It absolutely was. Mr. Chu, it was not. Well, What do you believe was the testimony? Ms. Bredehoft, Dr. Hughes testified that Bonnie Jacobs' notes documented both physical and sexual abuse. She also said that she talked to her and confirmed. That was the first day of her testimony. The court, I just don't have the transcript, so I'm not sure. Mr. Chu, that's not accurate, Your Honor. She continues to do this. Ms. Bredehoft, he can argue whatever he wants, but that's absolutely what she said. Mr. Chu, she can't lie to the jury like that. Ms. Bredehoft, and then I asked Dr. Curry about them after. The court, what was in the notes? Whatever. I know she reviewed the notes, but what was in the notes? Did that come into evidence? No, because it's hearsay. Mr. Chu, no, it did not. Because it was all hearsay. Because it was all hearsay. Hearsay. Ms. Bredehoft, yes, well, the court, I'm not sure the notes. Bredehoft, characterization of it, not the actual notes did not. The court, characterization? Bredehoft, characterization. Dr. Hughes said those things were in her notes. The court, her characterization of them. Ms. Bredehoft, characterization of them, right. The court's leading her into a trap at this point. Danger, danger, Elaine, danger. The court, that's not actually in her notes. Mr. Chu, correct. Ms. Bredehoft, no, she said that Mr. Chu, she needs to correct that. She continues to lie to the jury. Ms. Bredehoft, she says that the notes reflected physical and sexual abuse. She said that. That was her testimony. She did. Mr. Chu, that is not evidence, Your Honor. The court, I don't recall that. Ms. Bredehoft, she absolutely did. She absolutely did. The court, you can use she characterized it as such. I don't know that you can say they were actually in there. Mr. Chu, yeah, she's misstated that to the jury. Ms. Bredehoft, no, I have not misstated it. Mr. Chu, yes, you did. Ms. Bredehoft, I have not submitted my testimony at all. That's very important evidence from us because we could get those notes and we tried several times. No, you couldn't. Mr. Chu, she's saying it's in evidence when it's not. The court, well, but she did characterize the evidence. You can characterize the notes. Ms. Bredehoft, thank you, Your Honor. This part is not Amber Heard's fault, and she has no control over how unappealing her attorney is right now.
Bonnie Jacobs' notes as reflecting both contemporaneous physical abuse.
She had to backtrack again.
Throughout that time.
She had to fix it again.
Dr. Spiegel confirmed that later and said the same.
Ms. Bredehoft, so Dr. Hughes specifically characterized Dr. Bonnie Jacobs' notes as reflecting both physical and sexual abuse. Dr. Spiegel confirmed that later and said the same. And
when I asked Dr. Curry if she had reviewed those.
Your mic's on, Ben Chu.
Yes,
Dr. Spiegel was a shit show. We all know.
Your Honor, objection.
That was in there.
This is bad. This is bad. This is bad. Mr. Chu, Your Honor, objection. Ms. Bredehoft, and she did not acknowledge that it was in there. All right, sidebar. Wackadoodle Spiegel did not say that. I think when we get to wackadoodle, when we get to calling one of the experts a wackadoodle at sidebar, maybe we've gotten too comfortable with the court. I'm not mad about it. I think if you're a judge, you're like, Mr. Chu, a little too snarky guy, rein it back. But at this point, I imagine Ben Chu is pissed because he believes Elaine has misstated stuff to the jury. So he's mad. Mr. Chu, Wackadoodle Spiegel did not say that. The court, Dr. Spiegel didn't say that. Mr. Chu, could she please correct that? Ms. Bredehoft, yes, he did. Ben Chu, no, he didn't. The court, I know you are, but what am I? Just kidding. The court, he said he reviewed her notes, but he didn't say anything. He didn't characterize her. Ms. Bredehoft said, I just said he confirmed. The court, but he didn't confirm. He said, I reviewed the notes and said nothing about that. Mr. Chu, would you please ask her to retract that? The court, I will. There shouldn't be this many bench conferences in closing. I think it looks bad to the jury. I don't know if the jury knows how bad it is, but it's bad. I just wish we could see the bench. It is not good. Let's see how she
confirmed that he had reviewed Bonnie Jacobs' notes as well.
did. The judge just tell her what she could say?
Curry, she said she had reviewed them, but she had no comment, but she also didn't deny that those were in there. Amber Heard testified that she went back, and because
Depp's team is now on their toes watching out for Elaine doing shit that she shouldn't be doing.
Earlier than she even realized before. She always had thought that it had started in 2013.
I think this looks very bad in front of the
When she
jury.
went back and saw Bonnie
I really
Jacobs'
do.
notes, she realized that
I think it looks
started
bad.
much earlier, and she was very embarrassed by that.
Ms. Bredehoft, Dr. Spiegel confirmed that he reviewed Bonnie Jacobs' notes as well. And when I asked Dr. Curry, she said she had reviewed them, but she had no comment. But she didn't deny that those were in there. Amber Heard testified that she went back, and because of Bonnie Jacobs' notes, she realized for the first time that the abuse started much earlier than she even realized before. Oh, the Wackadoodle Spiegel.
California is a no-fault state and community property. So Amber doesn't have to have an abuse.
The fact that they're arguing no motive is telling.
Irreconcilable differences, for abandonment.
If it's
for
true,
adultery,
why
for
are you even
anything.
addressing
She doesn't
motive?
need an excuse. And she gets 50% of whatever he earns during the time of the marriage, unless they had a prenup or a postnup. The testimony from Michelle Mulrooney.
If they
was
felt
that Amber
confident in their
completely
position, they don't even
cooperated with
address
the
motive.
prenup
They
and
say there's no
postnup.
motive to
But it
telling
was
the
Johnny
truth
Depp,
other
who
than
had
telling the
already heard
truth.
from Ben,
And you move on.
called her up and fired
They're
her.
trying
He
to
didn't
prove
want
it.
a postnup or a prenup. So she's entitled to 50% of everything he earns during that time. Now we have Plaintiff's Exhibit 936 in evidence. And look at page 69. It says how much he made in 2015. It was $43 million. Remember Mr. Spindler, Depp's expert, who said that he made $22 million in 2016. So you got $65 million. Amber was entitled to 31.5 at least. That doesn't include all the back ends from, for example, Pirates 5. She was entitled to that money. So she didn't need to say anything. She could have just said, I don't like you anymore. I don't like the color of
Your
your
Honor.
hair. I'm going to divorce you.
Your
She
Honor,
would have been
we're
entitled
going
to
to
that.
object again.
He really doesn't want to. Objecting during closing is not something anyone wants to have to do. It is not regularly done. It is only when there are misstatements of the law and evidence, truly. And we're seeing that happening here. Mr. Chu, Your Honor, we're going to object. Sidebar. Mr. Chu, she's making legal conclusions. It's quite clear that Judge White had ruled very early in this case, we're not litigating the divorce here. She's telling the jury her legal opinions of California divorce law. Ms. Bredehoft, this is what Laura Wasser testified to. Mr. Chu, no, it's not. Yes, it is. No, it's not. Yes, it is. No, it's not. Your Honor, she's lying to the jury. The court, you can make arguments if they're in evidence. Ms. Bredehoft, they are. Mr. Chu, no, they're not. Ms. Bredehoft, Laura Wasser, yes, they are. Laura Wasser and Michelle Mulrooney, I'm sorry, Your Honor, but this is going against our time because we're already tough on time. Mr. Chu, you're already out of time. Ms. Bredehoft, I mean, he's already done this 3 times, okay? The court, we won't count the sidebars. Ms. Bredehoft, thank you. Mr. Chu, Your Honor, it's not in evidence. Ms. Bredehoft, it is. Mr. Chu, you wouldn't let it into evidence. Ms. Bredehoft, oh, I absolutely got that in. She's like, I won. I absolutely got that in. Mr. Chu, we did the whole deposition designations. It was ruled very early in this case. We're not relitigating the divorce case, Ms. Bredehoft. I'm 100% certain that, Mr. Chu, and she's wrong on the lawsuit too. Ms. Bredehoft, it's in Laura Wasser's and it's in Michelle Mulrooney's. Laura Wasser has both the no fault and the community property in there. Michelle Mulrooney has the community property in there. The court, I know I heard about community property. Mr. Chu, she's saying she's entitled to 31.25. I mean, it's ridiculous. Ms. Bredehoft, right? And we put the tax returns in and Spindler testified to the amounts. So you do the math. It's 31. The court, so, but yeah, you do the math. Ms. Bredehoft, right. Mr. Chu, she's making, Ms. Bredehoft, But we even asked in cross-examination to one of them, the 31.5. I mean, I'm entitled, Mr. Chu. She's telling the jury, Ms. Bredehoft, to make these arguments. Oh, now they're just arguing over each other. A falsity about the application of California law. Ms. Bredehoft, no. Mr. Chu, that doesn't take into account the Ms. Bredehoft. It was elicited to debts that are assumed by Mr. Depp. No, Wasser, Judge White said very early on, we're not relitigating the divorce. Ms. Bredehoft, no, you don't take debt into account. The court, we're at the end of talking about the divorce. Ms. Bredehoft, I'm near the end. Yes. The court's like, me too. No, the court said, okay, all right. Ms. Bredehoft, I'm doing the motivation here. Oh, the motivation for the divorce. Okay. It took me a minute. Like, what motivation are you doing? Are you trying to like gear yourself up for the rest of closing? I'm like, what is happening? All right, Ms. Bredehoft. Okay. I'm going to move on, but I'm entitled to that. The court, I understand, but if you're going to do calculations, you're going to let them know this is mere inference of the evidence that's in. That's fine. Then we'll go from there. Okay? Benchu, thank you, Your Honor. Back to open court. It's all over the place. I feel like I'm being yelled at, and I just want it to stop. They are trying to plug the hole of every argument.
If you do the math,
and that doesn't feel
Amber's entitled
strong.
At least 31.5. What does she take? 7 million. What does she do?
She had
with
to
the
fix it
7
again.
million? She gives it to charity.
So if you do the math, Amber's entitled to at least 7 or 31.5. What did she take? 7? What did she do with the 7? She gives it to charity. What now, Elaine? What now? What now?
She intends to give
What?
it to charity. Now, they make much ado about the pledge versus donation.
Because it's a big fucking deal.
Designees for
Or she intends to give it to charity.
ACLU and for Children's Hospital said donation and pledge are interchangeable. These are pledges.
Mm-hmm. Now, they make much ado about the pledge versus donate, but both the corporate designees for the ACLU and the Children's Hospital said donation and pledge are interchangeable. These are pledges. They use them synonymously.
The ACLU corporate designee said, you typically do pledges because of the tax benefits. And that's what she said. She pledged it over a period
And
of time
never
because of the
paid
tax
it.
implications to it and because she was getting paid over the time. Now she started to make these donations, and you'll see that the first one was on behalf of Mr. Depp's business manager, Mr. White, actually sent the letter.
Don't insult the jury, Elaine.
Each of those.
For example, if I get the verdict at 10:20 in the morning, it wouldn't be read until noon. So it's always going to be at the top of the hour, at least 60 minutes later, if that makes sense. That gives you time.
Okay.
I would ask that at least one attorney is close enough within a 10-minute range for any questions. I'd appreciate that. Okay. And I know some of the attorneys are going to be leaving, so I just wanted to thank all of you for your professionalism and your hard work during this case. It's much easier being a judge when you have excellent trial attorneys in front of you. It does make it easier. And I also want to thank the attorneys and litigants for the kindness and the great demeanor you've shown to my staff and to the courthouse staff and to the deputies in the sheriff's department. I really appreciate it. It means a great deal to me. Okay. And I also appreciate Judy because she's a rock star. Okay.
Judy is a rock star. The
Yes.
the stenographer.
Well, that's the first. Okay.
Your mic, Elaine. Elaine. Your mic,
That
Elaine.
is one thing on which Ms. Bredehoft and we respectfully agree. Completely agree.
He couldn't even
Completely
say agree.
Well, good. I'm glad on the last day we finally have an agreement.
Thank you, Honor. We're very grateful. Thank you.
Okay, you want to approach? Sure.
Ms. Bredehoft, one matter if we can't approach the court, you want to approach? Sure. Just for old time's sake. That's a nice moment of kind of a levity at the end as we begin Verdict Watch 2022. But I think it's just to do those last minute wrap ups. Ms. Bredehoft, I might have misheard it, but I thought at the end of your explanation, Your Honor's explanation of the verdict form, I thought Your Honor said if they find, the court said no. No on any of the court said any of the pages. If you put a no on any page, you don't get to damages. Ms. Bredehoft, as long as Your Honor, it just was still confusing to me, but the important thing is Your Honor's on it. The court, we're on it. We're good. Mr. Chu, thank you very much. Ms. Bredehoft, really thank you. Yes, really thank you. We do really, really thank you. The court, all right. If we hear anything, we'll let you know. Okay, all right. Thank you. Thank you. All rise. Done. The court, since it's a long weekend, let's bring them in and send them home. Okay, whereupon the jury entered. And the following took place, and they excused the jury for the weekend. They are done with 6 weeks of trial. I'm not surprised that we saw a moment with the attorneys thanking the judge, thanking the court staff. This has been a very, very long trial. This court staff will have worked very hard. The judicial assistants will have worked very hard. This judge was tremendously patient. I am not surprised that there are people lining up who want to see possibly the attorneys. And then we're going to have everyone exit the court. The court indicated that some of the attorneys will be leaving, meaning leaving the state and getting back to work. I wonder who is going to stay for the questions and for the verdict. It'll be interesting to see. We have indication that the court has said that the parties, Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, do not need to be present for the verdict. And I imagine that they will not be present for the verdict. And it looks like we've got the entire legal team. Like, this is all legal team back here on Team Depp. That is a lot of people. And I am not surprised. This team has worked well. They have worked hard. It is a 6-week trial. And you're seeing the audience all waving at Johnny Depp. He seems to wave to them every single day. And we're not seeing that. We're not getting to see all of Amber Heard's legal team. Hopefully they'll zoom back over there. But lots of attorneys in the courtroom today for closing, because closing's the fucking best. And that is the end. It's the end. Y'all, we've done the sidebars, or at least a good portion of the sidebars, not every single sidebar, but a good portion of the sidebars. We are done with the sidebars.